Dr. Jeff talks love. Dr. Jeff talks life. Answers your questions, cuts through the strife. Sex and intimacy, real and true. Evidence-based, made just for you.
Hello, and welcome. Welcome to Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy. I'm your host, Dr. Jeff Albaugh, and I'm grateful you're joining us for this really important conversation during Pride Month. Today, we're exploring the universal human need for belonging, what it means to be fully seen, to be fully accepted and valued for who we are, and how our families, communities, and faith traditions can create space for authenticity, connection, and love. This episode is number 77, believe it or not, a place for us as we are, LGBTQ plus, faith, identity, and belonging. So whether you're watching live or listening to the recording later, I just want to tell you that every moment of your amazing life matters. And I am so grateful that you have taken a few moments out of your life to join me for this podcast. Welcome. We're connected. We are across so many platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on X, we're on LinkedIn. Quick favor, if you are a Facebook person, follow us. The more people who follow us, the more we can do on Facebook. Visit the website. Boy, you can watch all the previous episodes, and there's like 75 of them in there. So you can watch all those previous episodes. You can pull up the calendar and see the amazing guests that are going to be on in the future. So go to the website and learn more. You can take us with you. We're where you are. If you're working out, Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy can be right there with you. While you're working out, you can learn more about intimacy and improve your relationships. If you're going on a road trip with your loved one, wow, you two can really link into Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy because we're on Spotify, we're on Amazon Music, we're on iHeartRadio. We're right there with you streaming, so take us with you. As always, I'd like to take just a moment to remind you that all are welcome here in this space. Whatever your sexual orientation, whatever your gender identity, or your relationship style, we are thrilled that you are here. This is a space for everyone. The mission of the podcast is really easy. It's simple. It's to empower and enlighten you with evidence-based information that improves your sexual health, that deepens your relationships, so you can live your one miraculous, wholehearted, beautiful life with more love. Who doesn't want more of that? I sure do. This month, we celebrate Pride. We're exploring a topic that touches all of us, the fundamental human need to belong. All of us need to belong. It's a basic human need. For many LGBTQ plus individuals, questions of identity, acceptance, family, spirituality, and community can be deeply intertwined. While some find belonging by leaving traditional institutions and traditions, others seek ways to remain connected to communities, faith traditions, and relationships that have shaped their lives and are part of the fabric of who they are. Today, we're joined by someone who has spent decades helping people navigate these intersections with compassion, wisdom, and curiosity. Our conversation will explore what it means to create spaces where people can be fully themselves, how communities can grow and how they can evolve, and why belonging is essential, not only for individuals, but for our collective well-being. We all need to be in those spaces together, whatever our sexual orientation or our gender identity. So please join me in welcoming Ann Russo. Ann Russo is a licensed clinical social worker. She's an educator. She's an author. She's a certified sex therapist. She's been with us before. She has more than 30 years of experience in helping individuals, couples, communities navigate issues of sexuality, relationships, identity, spirituality, and social justice. She is the founder of AMR Therapy and has dedicated much of her career to creating affirming spaces for LGBTQ plus individuals and those exploring the intersection of faith, culture, sexuality, and belonging. Ann's work is informed not only by her clinical expertise, but also by her background in theology, social work, and community engagement. And I'm so excited to have you here. You're known for your compassionate, inclusive, thoughtful approach. And I just couldn't think of anybody better to lead us through this topic and discussion for Pride Month. So thank you so much for taking time to be with me to talk about this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeff. I just love hearing your introduction. It's just so beautiful. It just fills me with joy and happy feelings, happy spirits.
Good. And that's what it's all about. Gosh, this is such a hot topic. I was just thinking, while we're getting ready for this, I was in South Carolina last week, and my friend was going to Atlanta for a book signing for this book. And that is called Conversion Therapy Dropout. She was going to a book signing. She gave me a copy of the book because she's like, I want you to read it. I'm like, gosh, this goes perfect with our topic. So just a little bit about it, in case you're wondering, listeners. Timothy Schrader Rodriguez was an invisible architect behind evangelical Christianity's digital empire, crafting messages of belonging for some of the most influential mega churches out there. I know some of you have heard of things like Hillsong Church, Elevation Church, Willow Creek, all while doing this about belonging, secretly questioning his own place within faith as a gay man. So it's a really, really interesting book. And believe it or not, the foreword is written by Shauna Nyquist, one of my favorite authors in the Christian world. And she wrote the foreword to it. She is Bill Hybels' daughter. Bill Hybels was in charge of Willow Creek Church, and she knew Timothy. She's been involved with him for years and completely supported him in his journey of healing. So we have that just happened. And we were talking about that beforehand.
Yes.
And then there's this amazing song out there from the 1990s by a group called Avalon in the Christian community. And one of the founding members, Michael Passons, was part of that group. But then when he came out and that he was gay, he was ostracized by the evangelical Christian community. And so, very interestingly, they've just had a re-release, which went to #1 of the song Testify to Love. And it's done with Ty Herndon and also Melissa Green, who is a founding member of Avalon, as well as Michael Passons, the one who came out and is going through all this. And so it's so exciting to see some of these things happening in those communities. And I'm like, wow, this totally fits with our conversation.
Just hearing you talk about that, I'm thinking of the 90s and being at pride parades and seeing so many people that were Christian just blasting the LGBTQ community. And now when I go to pride parades, I see church after church after church in the pride parades. So much has changed since that time, which is wonderful.
Oh gosh, it's so wonderful. And the thing is, and two, I know a lot like Shauna and also Melissa, who's now an ordained minister from Avalon. As heterosexuals, we thought we were being supportive of our LGBTQ plus community, but in the end, even that evangelical way of don't ask, don't tell. We're not going to kick you out, but don't ask, don't tell. But we found, gosh, this is really damaging to our friends and our colleagues in the LGBTQ plus community. And we weren't really supporting them the ways that we should. And maybe still today, we're not really always supporting them in all the ways we should. So I thought, gosh, here you are, you have a theology degree and you're a therapist. How does that actually shape the way you work with people, and who and how you're trying to hold on to their faith? These people are holding on to their faith while healing from harm from religious cause that religion has caused them. This is a real intersection that you work with, and so how do you put all that together?
Well, Dr. Jeff, is also being a queer person and growing up in a queer household in the 1980s. I feel like I have a very unique perspective on this, a really lived perspective. So, growing up in a queer household in the 80s, I was taught very young that Christians hate my family and they're the ones that are against us. And I can remember watching talk shows like Oprah and Maury, and you'd have the gay people against the Christians. So I always had this innate fear of Christianity specifically, because I knew that they hated my family and I didn't understand why, but I just knew that that was not something that I could be a part of. And then as I got older and I realized my own sexual orientation, I was, even more afraid because I knew how my family was treated, and I didn't want to be part of a community that was going to be treated so poorly by another community, feel so marginalized and stigmatized. So nowhere in this experience did I, or do I imagine anyone says, I really want to be stigmatized, marginalized, and not part of a community. We are who we are, and then we're trying to fight for our place in community. So once I was in high school, I became more interested in Christianity and religion in general. And when I was 18, I actually joined a fundamentalist church, an evangelical church, a very Bible-based church, because I wanted to understand, who are these people that hate me? Because I never really understood the theology. I never really understood where they were coming from. I just knew that they were my adversaries. But my internal compass, my social justice way of thinking and living, and how I've always been, I'm like, I really need to understand deeply what this is about, rather than just deciding that these are my adversaries. And so by being in that church, but already being out as a queer person and not being raised in the church, I was able to see really what those messages were and what the communities understood about what it meant to be part of the LGBTQ community. And it was so not the reality of what it meant to be part of the LGBTQ community. So I started to have a lot more compassion and understanding of where they're coming from. I went to an ex-gay ministry to back then it was something called Exodus International, and people were ex-gay and they were talking about their experiences, and I'm hearing their growing up Christian and then in their gay life, how they lived and how they came back to Christianity. And I'm realizing these things are not adding up. Like there was this division of, if you're part of LGBTQ community, you could not be part of a Christian or a faith community. And I did not, I fundamentally disagreed with that. So I went to get my degree, my master's in theology, with the idea of the intersection of Christianity and queerness specifically. And then from there, I went on to get my degree to be a therapist, to help people who wanted to remain in faith, who felt like they didn't have a choice. Because I feel as though sexual orientation, gender identity, it is who we are innately, but to act like we can just dismiss a faith system or a spiritual belief, that something's so integral and part of who we are, is simply not true. So being forced to decide between these two things is you can't be forced to decide. So that people get put in positions of really, and you'll see this a lot in the LGBTQ community. There's a lot of talk around religion, around Christianity, a lot of mocking or distortion, because there's a lot of pain and a lot of hurt, and people are trying to make sense of those things. And then you'll have the more conservative Christian communities that don't fully understand what it really means to be an LGBTQ person. So having that unique perspective, I feel like I'm really able to support people and what it means for them to be a faithful person and be true to who they are. So it's belonging to all the communities, right, that they belong to.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, Ann, I mean, you really lived this experience, and it's like you can speak to it directly because you lived it. And I mean, listeners, I mean, just try to imagine if you didn't live this. I'm just imagining for a minute. You are in this community that is built completely on love, on a concept of loving God and loving other people, and yet you are literally an outcast, and your love is wrong. I can't even fathom how that must have felt, or what that would be like for people, including yourself.
Well, so the part where the compassion piece comes in, and this can be very difficult, but what I learned was that in the more conservative Christian communities, they really believe that they're helping you.
Mm.
Like, this is not coming, at least from my experience, this is not coming from a place of hate
No.
or malice. Like, it's truly coming from a place of, I'm worried about your salvation. I'm worried about whether or not you're going to go to heaven. And I love you and I want you to be in heaven with me. And if you live this life, and this is very interesting, because when we look at statistics, right? Like, if you live this life, statistics show LGBTQ people have more of a substance abuse issue. They have more of an issue of STDs, mental health. So these statistics get pulled by these communities, and they go, this is intrinsic because you're part of the LGBTQ community. Unfortunately, what they're missing is it's not because of the LGBT community. It's because of the rejection that they're experiencing from their family and friends in church that causes them to have more struggles than folks that are not. So it's really an issue of rejection, not an issue of identity of being LGBTQ. But so the same statistics that, we're using on this side to say, hey, like, stop rejecting people, they're pulling the same statistics and seeing it a completely different way. So it makes conversation sometimes a little bit difficult, but not impossible.
Mm. Yeah, and you think about, I mean, even in this book, Conversion Therapy, he talks about Exodus International, the largest ex-gay organization, closed in 2013, but there's still the different tenets are still happening in the conservative religious community. And again, like you said, it doesn't come out of a place of hate. It comes out of a place of love, but it causes a lot of damage for people trying to, like Timothy Schrader Rodriguez, who are like, okay, I mean, he spent years trying to convert himself to become something he just could not become. And again, like you said, it's not like these people were trying to hurt him or trying to harm him, but it's really harmful and hurtful regardless.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that what helped me with that understanding was it could bring me into the space and have more of a dialogue of what was going on. And it was easier for me, right? Because I wasn't raised in the community, the Christian community. Now, if I had been raised in it, I think that would have been very different, but I couldn't be impacted by the same way with scripture being yelled at me or concerns about sin or damnation as the way that people that, whose brains developed in these situations. So it gave me, I think, an additional insight that would have likely triggered or caused more trauma for people that were raised in those situations. So I feel like that was a unique experience that I bring with me into therapy sessions to help folks explore different ideas who would have been damaged by the conversations that I would have had and who should not have had the conversations that I would have had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, I mean, ultimately, queer people feel like they have to choose between their identity and their faith community, right? And so what do you see happening when someone tries to stay and be a part of that community? I mean, what happens?
Well, I've seen a lot of different things happen. I've seen, unfortunately, mostly what I see is someone in a lot of pain, someone with depression, anxiety, PTSD, low self-esteem. You can't shut off who you are. You can't shut off pieces of who you are. It's impossible to do. It's akin to imagine, as a heterosexual person, never being able to act on, talk about, or acknowledge love.
Wow.
I think that sometimes we can get lost in this idea of sexual orientation. It's about sex, or like, I remember the church that I was a part of would say, well, just don't act on it. That was the message. It was like, okay, you can be this. Like, we're recognizing that this is a true orientation. Don't act on it.
Wow.
So you don't act on it, right? Like, I mean, how do you not act on how you were built to be?
I mean, absolutely. And then what does that do to someone's sense of self, especially when their sexuality or gender was the thing that's being condemned? I mean, what does that do to my self-esteem and how I feel about myself?
Oh my gosh, you start policing yourself, and you don't really have a sense of autonomy, and you don't really have a sense of self-empowerment, right? And there's a real moral rupture that takes place because who you are internally is at odds with what's happening externally. So just imagine what that's going to do to someone's nervous system.
Wow. And I think about already so many of the people out there that are traumatized in whatever way, they've had sexual trauma or interpersonal trauma or whatever kind of trauma. And already how damaged the sense of self can be, that self-esteem, that self-image can be so traumatized. And so you created this religious trauma treatment model, which I think is really so cool. And we had you on before, and we've had others on before talking about religious trauma because it's a real thing, listeners. And we keep discussing it because there's so many people out there who identify with having had religious trauma. And so you created the religious trauma treatment model. So what does healing actually look like for a queer person who still wants to be in relationship with God or their faith tradition?
So with the religious trauma treatment model, the main focus is very first somatic. So we do a lot of somatic healing before we even get into religion. And then we slowly build an understanding of what a person's belief system is versus an inherited belief system. We look at their values, how to live their values in practice, and then what that means in sustaining a spirituality. I say that very quickly, but this is years sometimes of work. But the goal is to heal the moral rupture that has taken place. It is to build a sense of autonomy within faith and then to be able to live that. So even if some of the messages may still be the same as what they were prior to doing the work, they're yours, and they're not because they've been inherited. And the goal is through that autonomy, through that understanding your own spiritual self, that spiritual self can grow. So it's a series of exercises and practices. And I mean, it takes time. I mean, it definitely takes time, but it's really getting to know yourself. And any, therapist trained in the model can do it. You don't have to be an expert in religion. You just have to understand the way the system works. So you help unpack the system for the client.
And it uses that trauma care as well that therapists are very familiar with. But you started out with the word, and we say it a lot on here, somatic. Can you tell the listeners a little more? They may not all know what you mean by somatic. It begins there. So
Totally. In the body and in the nervous system.
exactly.
We have so much happening there, and we don't learn about it, growing up and like going to school, and like it's kind of, we just leave the body out, but our body tells us so much about what we experience, right?
It
So
tells the story. It always tells the story. Listeners, trauma shows up in your body. It always tells the story of your trauma. It shows up in all different ways in your body. So that's what we're talking about with somatic, how it shows up in your body and your nervous system, and how you deal with it showing up. And because you don't want that dysfunction that accompanies how it shows up in your body.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why we do that work before we even start to unpack any religion. And then we do it while we're unpacking religion, because sometimes we don't even understand the level of which our body can be impacted, and it can move us out of our ability to actually process information and feel safe in processing the information. So when we can teach the body and our nervous system to be more calm, then it becomes easier to process and not feel threatened as we start to unpack systems.
Yeah. And so you hit on a really good point with the trauma work I do with patients as well. So listeners, what we try to do, what she's talking about, is down regulating, like quieting, calming, down regulating. And sometimes that's exactly what your body needs. Breath work and down regulating and calming yourself, self-soothing, learning how to do that, because your amazing peaceful self is right inside there. That beautiful spiritual part of you that is incarnate in you is peaceful. And so tapping into that. And then sometimes your body needs to upregulate. It needs to move. It needs to. So that's part of the somatic therapy we do with trauma is, what are you feeling? And do you need to downregulate, soothe, and calm? Or do you need to upregulate, get moving while you're breathing and calming yourself, but moving your body? All those different things can help with that somatic therapy. So yeah, that's really cool, and it fits so well with trauma therapy in general, right? Trauma's trauma, and religious trauma is very traumatic as well. So yeah.
And we don't talk about it so much, even, like we're doing it more now, which I'm so grateful for, but therapists haven't always had the language to talk about religious trauma, because religion is generally supposed to be something positive and helpful, or therapists have their own views on religion and they're participating in their own religion. So it's one of those touchy subjects that kind of back off from. So this model gives a way to talk about those things in a way that doesn't necessarily have to categorize it as like, you're so traumatized by your religion. It's more like, well, let's talk about the messages that you received. Are those messages working? Have some of those messages hurt you? Where do those messages come from? Because you can have someone who shows up with religious trauma or religious harm, and they never even bring it up. I had a client who was very people pleasing, and if I didn't, in my assessment, talk about religion, then I would not have learned that by growing up in an authoritative church, they were taught people pleasing is what needs to happen for their salvation. That's all they knew how to do was people please. So it showed up in their job and their other relationships. So the work was actually undoing the religious message and having them understand where that came from and what they actually believe now. Like, people pleasing isn't about God. It's like learning how to say, I can stand up for myself and still be pleasing to God, versus a message of God won't love me if I don't follow X, Y, Z. So you're really working the roots of what's been taught in these faith systems.
Yet we're also taught grace, which it's like you can't earn it. You can't, and none of that really matters in the end, that it's about grace, that you're given mercy, that you're given what you don't necessarily deserve. You can't possibly earn it. There's nothing you can do to make it more or less. It's just there, grace and mercy. So it's, and again, you'll hear us talking about these things because Ann and I, our spirituality and our religion is central in our lives too. And so we're not here to in any way bash or go against spirituality or religion. We just want it to be authentic and real for everyone because I love my religious core and my spiritual core. And gosh, I just hate that people feel excluded or pushed out by something that's supposed to be all about grace, mercy, love, these key concepts that everybody needs universally, especially in a brutal world like we live in. So, yeah, I mean, again, we're here really to talk about how those two things come together, not to bash anything or anyone. So,
Absolutely. And I really appreciate you saying that because the goal of the religious trauma treatment model and my goal with my clients is never to push a way to believe. It's to honor their own coming into their belief. Whether it's my belief or not, it's irrelevant. It always comes down to autonomy. And sometimes, and I have had this happen, where I have had people decide that it was better for them to choose not to act on their identity, and that, but they went through the work, and that was what they ultimately decided in therapy. And while obviously this is not conversion therapy in any way, but the role of therapy for me is to honor where they land. If they believe and they feel that that's the work that they've done, they've gone through the treatment, they've gone through the goals. Now that I think personally will change later, but it's not my job to push something. My job is to open a door so people can think and feel and discover.
mm,
And sometimes that can be a little tricky.
and so to really synthesize and bring back together and cross-pollinate their faith, their spirituality, and who they are,
Yeah.
and to make that all comfortable. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and so now, so we're evolving, we're changing, and so
Yes.
you have these churches that are welcoming, but that can be different. Different churches, different communities define that. So, but so what does it really feel like to belong and feel like, what does that feel like for someone to really feel like they belong if they've never had that before, to feel welcomed and belonging in those communities?
I think that journey can be a bit different for everyone. The key element is how were you raised? How long have you been involved in specific communities? What was the teachings of those communities? And you may always carry a little something with you. So I don't want to make it sound like, oh, it's just you're miraculously wonderful. There might be times where old messaging creeps up,
Yeah.
and that's
Trauma
okay.
loves to come back in, right? I tell all my trauma patients, and we've all experienced trauma. Everybody's had some sort of trauma in their life. And trauma, it's an ongoing process. It surfaces, you get triggered, it surfaces again. And now you have the tools to deal with it and to move through and on to thriving.
Exactly. And I think the thing that is very positive to see, that when we do find spaces that are belonging for our community, for the gay and lesbian community, or the queer community, the trauma does actually decrease. Like,
Mhm.
even if you are a person who was raised in a very high stakes conservative belief system, if you are 70 years old and you start doing the work, it's amazing. But we actually do see. So it's never too late to start to do the work around pain that you may have experienced from a
Mm.
religious belief system, or even if you still hold some of those beliefs yourself, there's a lot of internalized homophobia too from those belief systems. So it's never too late to do the work and to do the healing.
That's such a message of hope and so important. And so, and you think, well, all of us have our masks we put on, we feel like we have to pretend, we have to show up and not be authentic. And so for so many queer people of faith, they've spent years hustling, performing, trying to prove themselves and be something they're not. So what does it take to stop performing, to take off the mask and be real?
For some, there will always be spaces that are unsafe. And I think that that's something that we need to consider. Like, we can take off that mask and we can find community and we can find belonging. And we also need to recognize that there are some spaces that are not safe. That doesn't mean that we're not out. That doesn't mean that we're not self-accepting and self-loving. It just may mean that we have to have specific boundaries when it comes to certain people or certain communities. So I think that understanding that is key. And the more that you're around, like anything, the more that you're around people who are similar in thought and behavior and action, and you're doing positive things together, you do start to let that mask drop, and the trauma releases and your nervous system calms down, and soon you're just existing rather than being hyper vigilant of your existence.
Yeah. So important. And what's so exciting about this discussion, and I know you're going to come back as we get closer to this point, but you have a book coming out on healing religious trauma, and that's supposed to come out in February. So I know you got to come back and talk to us a little more about healing religious trauma, and dive a little deeper into that when it comes almost time for that book to come out. But wow, what do you most want your readers, what's the message that you hope to drive home for readers in healing religious trauma? Your incredible book that's coming out, and I'm super excited about.
Thank you. It's my heart and soul, that book. It really is. I feel like I was made to share this, and hopefully, it supports people. I don't want people to experience the pain that I've experienced and the pain that I know so many other people have experienced. So if it can just help a few people do that, like that is truly my worth on being here. I really feel that. And I lost your question because I got so excited about people healing.
We're both excited about this book, and it's so cool it's coming out because we need this. Wow, so many things going on in the world that say we need this book, Healing Religious Trauma. So the question was just, what do you want readers to? What's the takeaway message that you hope your book leaves people with or resonates with them?
That it is real. People do have harm. They do have trauma from religious experiences. The book, while it's not focused just on the LGBTQ community, it talks about all types of different people. I mean, because I am part of the queer community, obviously, there's some heavier focus there. But in my work, I've learned that you can have religious pain, religious trauma, religious teachings that have really damaged you when you're part of any community. So what I hope people take from this is that healing can happen, and it doesn't mean that you have to leave your faith. And that's the thing that is a little bit different than anything else that's been put out there so far. There isn't a model yet out there that talks about helping support people who try to stay in faith. They're usually books and models around like, now what do I do that I've left? So this model is different in the sense of like, no, you're going to figure this out. Like, what does this mean to you? How are we going to build your autonomy? How are you going to find your own spirituality? Whatever that means for you, you don't have to choose one or the other. You find a way to integrate.
Yeah, that is so cool. So cool. And so I was just wondering, and I just put something in there for Vic to put below us, but where can they find you? And I have your website, which is, let me put it in there for you, Vic. There you go. And so he can put that little ticker tape below us, and that's where they can find you at www.annrusso.org. And I did put that in the private chat, Vic. There we go. Awesome. Because they got to be able to find you for the book and all the great things that you're doing. Because it's so cool, and I'm really excited about it. It's just, I love having you on the show, and I really want you to come back and talk a little more as we get closer to the book about some of the healing things with healing religious trauma that you can share with our listeners too.
Oh, absolutely. I would love that. Anything to help anyone to know that they're not alone.
Definitely. And so I'm going to ask you this before I go to the centering exercise so you can think about it a little. But if you could leave our listeners with one message about creating more inclusive families, workplaces, congregations, and communities, what would you hope each of us would take away and begin putting into practice today? So if you could leave our listeners with one message about creating those more inclusive families, workplaces, congregations, communities, what would you hope each of us would take away so we could begin putting this into practice today? And I'll come back to you in just a minute. But as we do, I'm going to kind of it's a lot to unpack tonight, and I want to center our listeners before we go to our final message. But and that's what we always do. So if you haven't been here before, this is what we do at this point. And I just welcome you into this space, really, as we move towards closing our conversation today. I'd like to invite you into a brief moment, just a moment of reflection. If you're in a comfortable place, allow your feet to rest firmly on the floor and gently relax your shoulders. Take a slow breath in through your nose for a count of 4, and slowly exhale for a count of 5 through your mouth. So in through your nose and out through your mouth. Again, breathe in deeply. Breathing's powerful. Allow your chest and belly to expand. And exhale, releasing any tension you may be holding in your jaw, your shoulders, your pelvic floor, your back, anywhere you hold tension. So every time you exhale, clear, release that tension. If you want to place your hand over your heart or your abdomen as you breathe in your nose, and you clear by breathing out your mouth. As you breathe, consider this thought. I deserve to belong exactly as I am. I deserve to belong exactly as I am. I do not have to earn my worthiness. I do not have to earn my worthiness. My authenticity is not a barrier to connection. It is the pathway to connection. My authenticity is not a barrier to connection. It is the pathway to connection. Take one final slow breath in. Clear. Long, gentle breath out. So, don't forget your worth. Know that and realize it. Take that with you, that message. So, Vic, can you share with our listeners what is up next week on Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy?
What does it really mean to have a healthy sexual life? In this thoughtful and affirming episode, Jennifer Moninger joins Dr. Jeff to explore the 6 principles of sexual health. a framework developed by Doug Braun Harvey and Michael Vigorito that has become foundational in modern sex therapy. Jennifer will discuss key principles for healthy sexuality. These include consent, non-exploitation, protection from HIV and sexually transmitted infections, prevention of unintended pregnancy, honesty, shared values, and pleasure. She will explain how these principles help people move beyond shame and fear. Learn how they can foster authenticity, deeper intimacy, and greater sexual well-being. Join us on June 30th at 7 p.m. Central Time to learn more.
Wow, that's going to be a great episode, and we're always trying to enhance and learn more to enhance and enlighten our listeners on how they can have better sexual health, sexuality. And so I'm excited about that episode next week. But this week, gosh, Ann, it's just such a pleasure to be with you, and I really appreciate the openness and even the personal journey that you shared with listeners this evening to help them know they're not alone, that there is hope. There's a lot of challenging things in the world around us, but there is hope and there is healing. And you are a part of that hope and healing. And I'm so happy to have you here to offer that to our listeners. And so that's really, really exciting to me. All right. So I left you with a question. And so what would you like to tell our listeners?
You may be the most affirming person or community, but if you don't have something showing that visually or asking that or saying it, nobody will know. Mm. And so symbols and signs, they speak volumes.
Definitely. And wow, how biblical too, and how spiritual. Signs and symbols. Yes. I mean, you just can't get away from the theology, Ann.
It's a wrap.
Signs and symbols. So listeners, I hope you know that Ann and I, our hope and prayer and wish for you is that you find place and space for the beautiful, miraculous human being that you are, exactly as you are, because you are more than enough and you are worthy of love and belonging. And I'm just so glad that you joined us, and I hope that message resonates with you and you find that safe space, because it can be scary. I know my friend's church down in South Carolina, it's a Lutheran ELC, Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, and they have a security guard at their service because of the inclusiveness and the different things. One of their pastors is a gay man, and they have a very strong LGBTQ ministry. So you got to be careful because we live in a crazy world, but there is a space and a place for you, and you deserve that space and place. That's our hope and prayer for you. Thank you for joining us, and goodbye.
Dr. Jeff talks about sex and intimacy, breaking down the science, setting your spirit free with stories, wisdom, laughter, and care. Connection.